Boom. Alrighty. Well, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Magic Gaming Esport Academy presented by Florida Blue. I'm your host, as always, Harris Rubenstein. And today, we are joined by a very special guest. It's nice that we get a guest on that's kind of on my side of things.
Yep.
This is Matt Morello. He is an associate director of content for Overwatch League. You may know him as Mr. X. He's casted multiple esports for, forever, Matt. You're kind of an OG in the community now, man. How you doing?
Good. It is crazy to just sometimes just sit back and be like, wow, 10 years ago, like 10 years ago was even 5 years after I stopped playing competitively. It's like, man, it's been a whirlwind, but to see where esports is at now, it's been awesome.
So let's get into the very beginning for you. I always love finding out how people got into the esports industry in general. The wide variety of stories that we've gotten on these seminars has been appalling almost. So like, I want to hear,
Yeah.
how did you get into all this chaos?
Uh, so I just loved gaming, and then I growing up loved sports. Played a ton of baseball, ton of basketball, volleyball, like everything growing up. And then eventually you hit a point where you realize you're not going to be like a professional athlete. And then you're also like, uh, what else can you do to kind of scratch that competitive itch? And for me, it was like gaming. It just kind of like naturally happened. Segueing over towards competitive gaming. Played a bunch of games online on like the original Xbox. And then the game came out called like Rainbow Six.
Yep.
That was running on the MLG Pro Circuit. So uh I had played in an online tournament. I won that, told my parents I won this tournament. They're like, okay, sure, whatever. Check comes in the mail, and then they're like, okay, so what's going on in
Ah,
there? Yeah. Now the money's coming in. So it's like, okay,
sick.
what's going on? Um then my dad drove me from New York to Charlotte. There was an MLG Charlotte. Ended up getting second place at that one in New Jersey in the next one, and then just kind of kept on the
Mm.
circuit. Um After pro play, I took a little bit of a break. I kind of went and did some other stuff. Somebody who you had on here in the past, Ogre 2, I
Ah,
teamed with him in a Call of Duty event.
really? Oh, small
Yes.
world.
Yeah, so Tom was like one of a friends of ours, and we were looking for a last player for this Call of Duty $1 million event. Went there, we got smoked, destroyed. But I ended up meeting a ton of players that I ended up, coaching, managing, and then moving into broadcasting as time went on. And then just kept growing in terms of broadcasting. I know doing Call of Duty, doing Overwatch, and now actually working full time at the league. I know working on a lot of like the product plans and content.
Well, you're actually the first on-air talent that we've actually
Yeah.
had on one of these. So we're gonna get all into your production side of things, but what attracted you to on-air broadcasting? I mean, you spend that much time competing, that much time like getting to know people, sure, but like, the getting into on-air talent is like a whole adventure. Like, what was your first job in the industry with it?
So my first talent gig was essentially Chris Puckett inviting me to the MLG studio and was like,
Ah,
"Hey, we want to do
yes,
some Halo
love
stuff. We're doing
Puckett.
some Call of Duty stuff. Do you want to come by?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I didn't really kind of consider it as like a career path at the time. It
Mhm.
was like, "Hey, I can hang out with Puckett and Shibby, who are like two of my best buds."
Yeah,
I was like, I also get paid to do that, which is like, okay,
stunning.
sure, why not? Um, and over time, it was like, I kind of like this. And I think I took the part of it is I like trying to teach people the game and getting people to understand the games more in which I'm broadcasting.
Mhm.
Because I feel like that if you can get people to understand like the nuances and the depth, and that kind of gets them more involved, it kind of gets them a little bit looking inside the games a bit more. And that's where I started to carve out a niche. Call of Duty at the time didn't really have a ton of color casters. It was a lot of like hype, play by play, shout casty
Yep,
personalities.
the old
Uh,
classics.
yep, and I am very opposite, monotone. Like to joke around, but really want to give you the insights of what's going on. And I think I just hit like right place, right time. That's what the community wanted, and just kept growing from there.
So when you first started out, did you know in the moment like how big of a deal it was that you were working with these guys, that you were working on air talent? Like you mentioned that you didn't really see it as like this big thing, but like should you have back in the day? Like what was the vibe?
Maybe it
Maybe.
didn't really hit me
Yeah.
because I always viewed everybody as just kind of peers' friends. So when
Right.
I viewed it, it's like, hey, we're doing a broadcast. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get on there with one of my friends. We're gonna joke around. He's gonna ask me some questions, and I'm gonna give my insight on the game. I didn't really uh, understand how many people it impacted or reached
Right.
at the time. Sometimes I still don't even really understand that. I
Yeah.
know because like you see stream numbers across the board, they're so massive, and you just can't really put into context like how many people that actually is.
Yep.
Um, and I think I think that was a good thing though. I think didn't really look at things as like, hey, I'm competing against others. For me, it was like, hey, how can I make the best show possible
Mhm.
when I cast? How can I be additive to the game, not try and take over the game, and just be a plus one to the experience.
Did you at any point like realize that you were actually good at being a talent, or did you just kind of keep going out there and being you? Like, did you ever kind of have like an ego moment where you step back and you're like, "Hey, I'm kind of sick at this. Like, I'm gonna keep doing this."
I don't think there was ever like a moment. I think the first year in like the first opportunity to do like a finals, I was like, wait, they think I'm like that? Good. All right, cool. Like that's fine with me. Uh I've always tried to keep like very even in
Mhm.
terms of, I think the internet can be cyclical, especially with, I mean, commentating.
Oh yeah.
Uh, one week you're Reddit's best friend, the next week you're not. The week after you do the same thing you did the week that you were hated, and you're the best person on the planet, right? So it's just kind of keeping everything as like it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is. And just kind of keeping in the middle. I'm like, hey, we work with like a great talent team, try and be, great to everybody I work with across the board, be a team player, and then eventually good things will come. It's kind of how I approached it.
A quick detour from the history lesson,
Yeah.
because you make a good point about like treating people a certain way as talent, because I'm sure, like myself, that you have come across plenty of on-air talent who don't really act that way. Like, they might be divas or bring in big egos. Like, how did you kind of keep, I guess, your confidence, not in like a keep it low, but like keep it in a manageable place to where you could work but also continue to treat people with that respect, because it is something that comes up a lot.
Yeah, I can actually say I've been pretty fortunate of like the shows that I've worked on. Like
Sure.
everybody has been like awesome across the board. But I also think it's for me it's always about like how do we make the best show possible, and like the obviously you work with a ton of people behind the scenes who are also trying to make the best show possible. I also think production is really high stress. People don't realize that at
Hmm.
times that you're live, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can really do in the moment, so as much as you could feel frustrated, nervous, angry, just kind of all the list of emotions. Like the people behind the scenes are going through that and then some, right?
Right.
A lot of times they've been there longer,
Oh,
more
definitely
hours,
longer.
more days. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Where um, I always just try and like be mindful of that. Like we're all on the same team, we're all working to make the same thing. Uh, and yeah, just I always kind of like, hey, if they want me to cast this, sure. If they don't want me to cast that, fine. Like I'll cast this, whatever it is that makes the show the best. And that I always view production as like the kind of they have like the overseeing eye of everything, right? So I see stuff as a caster one way, they see stuff as from a general fan or production POV, and like ultimately like they the ones who can kind of give the best idea for what the show needs.
Well, let's go back to your history a little bit, because a big thing that stuck out for me is that you were a part of MLG coming up,
Yeah.
back during, like, I would say, like MLG's real heyday, right? Like they were pumping out all these great events, and at that point, MLG, once it got attached to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, everybody's jumping off buildings,
Oh
acting like
yeah.
snipers and stuff. Like, what was it like being a part of MLG starting out? Like, did you guys know the impact that you were having? I guess when kind of as it got bigger and bigger.
I mean, I felt it when I was a player, like how impactful it was. A lot of the people that I've met through MLG, and whether it was like players, whether it was people who worked at MLG when I was competing where I worked with, there's still a lot of the people that I speak to regularly all the time, people that I look to for, advice and like where to go. Like, uh, I think there's a large section of esports that kind of like owes a lot of their start to like those MLG days,
Oh yeah.
right? Whether it was competing in Halo or Rainbow Six or Gears of War, going to like different events,
Yeah.
really trying to like more normalize competitive gaming. Uh I kind of view that as like a huge impact. I mean, I've met, I mean, it's crazy to say now, but like there have been people that I've known through like the MLG pro circuit and online for, 15, 20 years, like more than
Wow.
I've known like friends that I grew up and went to school with. And without that kind of like infrastructure and everything, it just wouldn't have been possible. Which I think it's something that I think we all owe a little bit to in
Yeah.
terms of our existence where just creating pathways for players and people coming up, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest kind of takeaway from that is just giving people so many opportunities, whether it's in-person events, whether it's online tournaments, just giving people pathways to be able to meet other gamers like them and then also compete. I think that's where it really kind of made the biggest impact.
Well, heck, we we were talking before the show. Will Abreu, the current front bench producer for
Yeah,
the 2K League. Dirk, who obviously a good friend of mine and our current league caster. So I think one thing that we've definitely tried to demonstrate in these seminars is like how small the esports world really is. Like when we say that everybody knows everybody, like it really is. Like everybody truly does know everyone, and reputations precede people. And
yeah,
it's always good, like you mentioned, treat people with respect. Be sure that you're creating those pathways, like you mentioned, because you never know who you're going to meet 4 or 5 years down the line that
yeah.
you might be working with.
Yeah, and I would say it's an awesome part of the industry as well.
Mhm.
I love to see my friends that I've known for a long time win and do awesome things,
Yeah.
and go on like whether it's like different career paths, whether it's in esports and evolving and doing different things. I know talent that I know and work with who win awards and stuff. It's like awesome, right?
Mhm.
No, to be able to kind of work with so many talented people and kind of not really even like work with them from afar, right? Like these people,
You're
right?
right
Where
on
it's
them. Yeah.
such a small community. To see people get celebrated that forever is awesome.
Yeah, and again, like that's not only a part of esports. One of the great parts about being, just professional in any sort of industry, right? You get to,
Yeah.
celebrate successes together, even failures, right? I think one of the cool parts about esports, especially on the broadcasting side, is that, good show, bad show, you're all ending up at the same bar after the show anyway. You're all
Yeah.
drinking together anyway, so you might as well enjoy it while you have it, right?
Yeah, it's no, you're all part of the same team.
Mm.
I think where kind of sometimes like shows go awry is when there's like really strong competition. And I also think there should be like some level of competition, right? Like I want to be the best I could be as a caster. And I'm sure I want everybody else to be the best that they can be, in terms of on-air talent. But uh ultimately, like you're all friends, you're all buds, like we all hang out, like love to play games with some of the other members of the Overwatch talent team, and then even like the Call of Duty talent team. I still kind of keep up great friends with them.
Well, that's actually a good kind of leeway into something else that I wanted to ask you about. Multi esport broadcasters are kind of becoming, I would say, more and more common in the industry as, game. I wouldn't say that games become more and more similar, but there's crossover, right? First person
Yeah.
shooters. If you learn strategy for one, you can learn for the other. We've seen a lot of people go from Counter Strike to Valorant, Call of Duty, Overwatch. Like there's just like a lot of, I would say, lines between the two. Any difficulties for you going back and forth between esports? Like how did you kind of handle it?
It's hard. I mean, there's a lot of prep time that goes into
Yes.
being able to kind of keep up with multiple esports, multiple games. For me, like when I actually moved from Call of Duty to like Overwatch, I really looked at all right, like how does my personality fit this game and fit this kind of player base? Which I thought it did, and Overwatch is really in depth, but it's really fun, vibrant. Um, I always kind of say you can't really take a game too seriously when
Of
it's like a
course.
monkey with a cannon chasing down a hamster inside of a
In a ball,
ball
yep.
who's like chasing like this invisible woman. Like it's just ridiculous, right? So you can't you shouldn't treat it like it's golf, right? Or whispering and taking it super
Right,
serious.
right.
There is like a level of fun to it, but it has like a lot of like depth to it in terms of like strategy and skill where I viewed that as like an opportunity where I could double down on like what I thought my strengths were of
Mhm.
being an analyst and doing that. And when I go back and do some Call of Duty, I think it's awesome because I bring a very like nostalgic old like POV that uh fans still want to see.
Yep.
Uh I think it's just kind of playing to your strengths, right? Like there's some games that I love that I'm like, man, I probably wouldn't be great commentating that.
I
Like, I
feel that.
probably could figure it out,
Yep.
but like, do you like where is like the kind of the return on that? Like, how would I figure that out? How much time would I have to put in?
Right.
Um, and I'm also just okay being just a fan of those games. Like I can love other games and not cast them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really picking the games that uh, I love, I can get into. I think I can really be an addition to like a talent roster.
Hmm.
But I also try and limit myself because burnout's a real thing.
Oh yeah, we'll get to
Do
Burnout.
yeah, doing so many regular season shows and obviously doing some work behind the scenes. It can be a lot, and sometimes I have to catch myself of like, hey, I want to go do all this, and this, and then I'm like, wait, hold on, like we need a pause here.
Yeah, I feel that. We're gonna get to Burnout because I
Yeah.
mean, as a talent, like it's just so easy to take on like all these jobs, and you're like, yeah, let's just do everything. I do want to talk to you about Overwatch though, because obviously it's such a huge
Yeah.
part of your career. Before I get into it though, what do you main? Like what, like right now, like Overwatch 2, like
So,
what have you been playing a lot of?
so I put on the Overwatch League website that I made Roadhog because I
Uh-huh.
knew it would trigger everybody.
There you go.
But I don't play a ton of Roadhog.
Okay.
I've been playing. I mean, I just love the classics. Give me some Soldier 76. Give me some Cassidy. Give me
Okay.
some. If I want to just feed, give me some Genji. Right,
Okay. The
just
old
just getting in
DPSs.
there.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I'm a DPS main.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
When I want to just play for fun, I think if I was playing seriously and like really trying to climb, I probably belong in like the tank
There you
category.
go.
But
That's me.
but yeah, but in my heart, I want to believe I can do awesome things as a DPS.
Yeah, hey, you know what? As an Orisa main, every single time you spear somebody into a wall,
Oh
let me tell
yeah.
you, there's few things in gaming quite like it.
This where they nail with Overwatch is like the sound, like whenever you like do those like the Orisa spear or
Yep,
like the headshot like ping, like I don't know what it is. It's just the sounds are
just
so
wired perfectly. Yep.
satisfying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's talk a
Crazy.
little bit about you with Overwatch. When did you kind of know that it was? I don't want to say like, yeah, I guess when did it was it be like your main gig? Like when did you know? Okay, like I'm going in on Overwatch. I love this. This is the one. Like let's invest.
Dude, so it's kind of crazy. Overwatch, I was doing Call of Duty and then Overwatch went into like beta, and my wife is a content creator and I didn't get into the beta at first. I was like, man, this sucks. That game
I
looks
remember that.
awesome.
That was like a huge
Um
internet thing of who got it and who
yeah.
didn't.
And my wife got invited to the beta as a content creator. She's like, "Oh, this game Overwatch, whatever." And I was like, "Get in, get
Yep.
in." She doesn't play games on PC, but I was like,
Ah,
"Get it, get it." So she got in. We ended up, playing a ton during the beta, and then it was a point where like it was like fighting, like who was gonna get to play, like, um, at the time. And I think I just like kind of fell in love with like the characters and the universe and like just the overall gameplay.
right.
Um, and then I was like, well, how do you even, because I had really just grew up in Call of Duty, casting Call of Duty. I was like,
Right.
well, how do you even go to another game? Like it seems so foreign, like
Yeah.
to me. But ended up trying to like, make friends in the Overwatch community, meet different people that were doing different things in that space. Um, Ended up casting an event that was like on TNT. It was like an Overwatch
Oh,
Open,
the,
like
when
with
yeah,
E
when
League at the
Turner was
time.
really into esports. Yeah.
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 Um, and then met some Blizzard folks there. I was like, hey, this would be super sweet. Like if I could do this. Turns out they watched Call of Duty, which was a plus.
There you go.
They were like, hey, we've seen you
We know
before.
who you are.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Hopefully you liked it.
Yeah. Double yeah, right?
Yeah, hopefully you like me. And then at that point it was like, hey, uh, Overwatch is going to do this big league, this big season. It's going to be a brand new thing. Players from all over the globe, which I found like super
Yeah.
fascinating. Call of Duty, like at the pro level, is like mostly like NA and like
A
EU, like
little bit, yeah,
UK.
a little international.
Yeah, but and then I met the caster that I work with now, Uber Shouts, and once we kind of got working together, it was like really felt like a natural fit. And I mean, loved the game, thought we had a great thing going, so I was like, let's jump in. Why not?
What was your favorite moment as a talent ever that you've had since you joined the
Ooh,
Overwatch League? Like what's one moment that
uh,
you are just gonna like staple in your memory forever?
I think the first year's grand finals at the Barclays Center, being from New York, going to Barclays, like it was jam packed, like
That's
because
so cool.
you've seen like things, whether it's in China or Korea with like these big stadium shows for like League of Legends, and you're like, oh my god, this is incredible, like I wonder what that would be like. And then we kind of like did it and it was like, oh man, this is crazy. No, just kind of thinking
That's
back of
awesome.
like casting in a literal closet to now on a deck in the Barclays Center with like tens of thousands of fans.
Yep.
That was awesome. Just kind of that whole experience. I think that'll be one I'll never forget.
I want you to save the memory because we were having an interesting conversation before we went live about like in-person broadcasting versus this remote broadcasting world that a lot of us have kind of been I don't want to say forced into, but like also kind of forced into. Like, what's the adjustment been like for you? Like, is there a way that you can kind of verbalize it for the people who watch?
Yeah. It's I think when you cast in, and I think it's actually really kind of like trained people to be like even better broadcasters in a
Hmm.
way. Um, in person, right? You can kind of like cast to the game, and then you're also like casting to the crowd in some
To the
aspects, right?
energy,
Like
yeah.
as the energy kind of grows, your casting becomes heightened, right? Um, but at home you just don't have that, right? Which I think it is we can be like really difficult to like amplify those high moments.
Yeah.
But I think also it just makes you way better at identifying those hype moments of when you should go to like 10, or when people at home are feeling that sense of excitement.
Yeah.
um I think that's where it's really amplified. And I also think like it's super impressive how it seems like everybody across the esports industry, even like watching traditional sports and TV, has become with like remote broadcasting. Like
It's
because
everything now. Everybody's doing it, right?
because
Like,
I
it's a
mean I had
staple.
done shows online like obviously like pre-COVID, and you're kind of like, oh, like what is going on? Like it was a bit harder to
Yeah.
do. Um, and then it just seemed like the whole industry with like a snap of the fingers, like
Mhm.
figured out. I mean, tremendous production being done with everybody kind of like home and separated. Everybody on like voice comms, how they would be like in a backstage production room.
Discord chats galore. Yeah.
People being able to like grab replays and different types of cameras and all this type of stuff from home, which is something that like I never would have like imagined possible.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of where I love doing live events, but I also now love the ability that I could do Overwatch today, World of Warcraft tomorrow, Call of Duty the next, or you
Yep.
know what I mean? Like just so many, you can hit so many different things, and being able to do so much from home. And that the production quality is still going to be at a high level.
Which, finally after all these years, it's nice that like, there's so many companies that allow you to like stream through them, and these different production companies, even for like small tournament providers, right? Like, it's become such a viable option for so many.
Yeah, and it's just how skilled I think everybody became in such a short period of time, being able to do remote broadcasting.
Yeah.
You saw entire companies spin up that were like basically founded on remote broadcasting. I also think it's super cool that a lot of different things that we may have used as like gamers or streamers, right, with like OBS and Discord and all these other things. Like
Yep.
you're now bringing in people who have a real kind of like production
Mm.
background, and using these tools. Like they get really creative in how to like manage the servers and different audio channels, where
Yeah.
you can get a producer and you're like almost through Discord, and you're like, wait, what? Like this is sick. Like
I was just talking to my
uh
friends on this. What's going on? Now it's a work
yeah,
object. Yeah.
you're using something like Parsec to get like all these different game feeds and camera angles, and uh you just be able to do it from home. It's like incredible how
Yeah.
that all came to be, and I think it'll still be a large part. Because I love live events, but for live events, it does pose a barrier for some people to be able to go and
Yeah.
compete, right? Where ultimately, I want to see the best competition, and if the best competition can, only play from home, or whatnot, right? May not have the means to travel. Like
Gotta go where
that's
the
what I want
people
to
are,
see.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to play games online right now. It's so accessible that why put that kind of next barrier in front of people?
I will say that the one thing about remote broadcasting that's been the most difficult for me has been I find it to be you can do it, and we're live nightly 4 days a week. It can be very draining because you're constantly
Yeah.
being asked to get that energy from within. It's always you that has to bring the energy, and I feel like when you're doing in person casting, right, you might have a person next to you, two people or a couple other people that you could just kind of swing energy. You can share
Yeah.
it, and you can kind of make it a little bit easier. But when you're at home, like, it's all you, or and at least it's me and my dog who is currently sitting on the couch
Yeah.
in front of me,
It's
wondering why I'm yelling again.
it's trying to like put every sometimes it's difficult, I think, where you're a caster and you sit down and like where I'm sat now is where I cast, but it's also where I work during the, the week.
Mm.
Uh it's also where I like to play my games and hang out. Uh and it's like it can be difficult to be like, okay, we're on now, right?
Yep.
Like the camera's on, I'm on. Uh you do so many matches, right? And you want to treat each match with the kind of level of importance and care that you deem necessary.
Yeah.
And just I always like to challenge myself in terms of uh, getting more creative. I think me and my partner, Mitch, we really like to be more like conversational, I think, than a lot of other duos. And he
Sure.
handles like those big hype play-by-play moments. And how can we further, that kind of style
Yeah.
of casting and even refine it more, where I think you kind of have to almost create those little games in your head of like trying to get better at this, trying to get better at that, like, oh, I really hate the way I threw the commercial break there, or how can I better explain these types of things, where you always try and challenge yourself to get a little bit better every single I mean, it can be tough day in and day out, right? Because you do a 10-hour show,
It's a
you come
lot.
right back the next day, you do another 7 8 hours.
Yep.
Maybe it's week on week. You're trying to like improve a little bit more.
It's hard. Like I try not to compare it to like being a pro athlete, but like there are a lot of similarities to it, right? Where it's still a team environment. You're judged based off your individual performances, but also on your performances over a long period of time. You have to like be able to maneuver and adjust based off of roles. Maybe somebody's out one night and
It's,
you have to do something different. Like it's
it's so
similar in a way.
draining as well.
Yes,
I think
very.
that's one thing that people don't realize about, I think, like broadcasting and being on camera talent, is that like there's not really an opportunity to like be off. Like you're
You're
kind of
always on.
like on all the time, and when you're doing like casting or whatnot, your brain is kind of firing off at 1,000 miles an hour. And I know when I like turn off the lights and I walk away and I see my wife and like dog, like I almost can't remember like anything I casted that day. It's
I'm
just like
wired for
one
another
big
hour after the broadcast. I don't know
uh
about you. I'm like,
I
like
I become like my wife's asked me questions and I'm just kind of like staring off into space. I have no, like if you asked me what happened in the match on the day I cast, I couldn't tell you.
no
If you
idea.
asked me 2 weeks from then, I could. It just the whole thing is just a big blur in my brain for like the next like 4 to 5 hours, because you're just firing, firing, firing. Where it's not like physically draining like a professional sport would be, right? But it's just really mentally draining in terms of like always being on.
I think the drain also comes from like the emotional energy you have to put out there, right? Because like,
Oh,
while
for
it's not
sure.
physical, like you're still leaving emotion and passion out there. So that's what I always feel. I always feel so drained at the end of these days where I'm like, oh man, I have to get all this big emotion back up for tomorrow. Like when you do what 70 show days over the course of a
Yeah.
4 or 5 month span, like you don't realize how quick that recovery time is. It's 4 show days, 1 or 2 off days, 4 show days. Like it's a lot.
And I think it's really important as like talent to like pace yourself in a way.
Yeah.
When like obviously at the beginning of the series season, everybody is 0-0, and you see who's good, you see who's not good, right? Um, by week 20, you know, uh, you actually just
You know,
physically can't, and also probably just the audience is so well trained that if you have a the worst team against the best team, you wouldn't treat that as two teams on the playoff bubble,
right.
right? Um, and if you tried to treat every match as like an 11, you would just be run down by week 10.
Right.
So you need to really kind of pace yourself and cast to the level of game that you're going to see that day. That uh when we have some teams that are struggling or whatnot, like I usually try and look for more, it's a little bit more of a muted cast. If the team that's the underdog is making a sick comeback, then we kind of crank it up,
Yeah.
right? But otherwise, we look for things that they could, adjust, get better at, what they should be looking to do, like trying to tell more of a story from that angle, as opposed to trying to sell you that this is like a grand finals level matchup and you
Yeah.
should be, here. Um,
Save it
but
for
I
the
think it's
grand final matchups.
yeah, exactly. Because if you fire off all your bullets like that, eventually you get to the end and there's no more bullets left, right?
Exactly.
So you kind of need to save those. But I think that's where like sometimes like new talent, like it can be really difficult. Is that beginning of an event weekend, everybody's amped up. Those round one games, you're crazy, you're popping off, and then it's like, well, what do you do for the rest of the weekend, right? Like there needs to be some kind of natural progression in like how you treat these different games, whether it's a regular season match day, whether it's a tournament day. You always need to kind of be cognizant of like where you are in terms of the season.
It's actually a good time, I think, to detour back to what we were talking
Yeah.
about with overloading yourself as a talent or burnout syndrome, because burnout's something I had a lot of experience with. I came out of college, I did just that, right? I was doing sports broadcasting, I was working 13, 14 hours a day, I was loving it, but then all of a sudden 6 months later, I'm like on my
It hits
couch
you.
like questioning life. Like, it was terrible. What are some things that you've done to kind of manage burnout and your mental health, if you ever have like really dug into it? How do you get yourself out of that?
It can be tough. I always try and be extremely mindful of like, am I putting too much on my plate? Do I need to take time? Do you need to walk away for a bit? I think I've developed like a really good social circle of friends that are not within the gaming industry, which
Right.
I think is awesome because I think a lot of times a lot of people you meet in the industry also become your friends, which is great. But then you also just kind of like you never leave work in a sense. Like,
Sure.
you play games, you talk about what's going on at work, you wake up, you go to work, the weekends you're doing work. So it's like trying to get a little bit of a breakaway where uh I have friends now that I've played games with for years that they know what I do. They think it's funny. They meme on me all the time. Like, but we just love gaming together, and I think it's just a great escape from day in, day out work because
Yep.
my main release is I love to play games. I mean, that's kind of why
Of course.
I'm in this industry, and I think a
Right.
lot of us are because like we just love games, right? Where I don't want to not be able to play games. I think that I know spending time with my wife, my dog. I love watching sports. I mean,
Ooh, what are
we
your main sports? What are your
I'm a
go-tos?
huge basketball fan.
Ooh, what are you a
I
Nets fan?
No, no,
Knicks fan?
no. So I'm a Laker fan because I was a huge Kobe Bryant
Ah,
fan growing
okay.
up, like massive. And then the Knicks were just bad when I grew up. I
Yes.
mean, they,
Yep.
the Knicks just hit me at the wrong time. Just some real bad years with the Knicks growing up. But I love the deep dive into sports. You know, I'm one of the rare people who can probably sit and watch a whole baseball game.
My
I
kind of guy. Let's go.
Yeah, and that's the type of stuff that really kind of eases me. It's been fun to now that I know more live events are back, like being able to go to sports events, right?
Yep.
And just be there in the crowd and have fun and have that release. I think it's a great, at least for me, just a great kind of spot to just put my mind somewhere else, think about something else, watch something else, kind of get immersed in a different community.
I yearn for baseball season every year just because it is the best thing to put on like a work television or a side screen just to like have on while you're getting things done. It's been nice
Baseball's
this year.
become like sneaky underrated, I feel like, over the
Yes,
last few
especially
years.
with the new pitch clock, man. You're in and out of a baseball game in
Yeah,
2 hours. It's fantastic.
games are flying by. I mean, I'm still a basketball person, like through
Sure.
and through.
Amen.
But like, yeah, baseball is just a great. What I love about baseball is you just kind of casually go to a game, and the game is almost like, oh, it's there, but there's so much else to do
Yep.
around. When I go to a basketball game, I want to heckle, I want to go
Get guys'
crazy.
heads. Go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I was growing up, I was like the kid that would get the $20 Nick tickets and sit all the way up top, and think that the players could hear me down there, but no chance.
Yeah, that's screaming at your TV. They can't hear you. Stop
Yeah,
yelling at them.
exactly.
Let's wrap it around to the your job right now, right?
Yeah.
You're still doing on air work, but you got this big new producer role, associate director of content, big title. What kind of
Uh,
spawned your interest in producing? How did you end up kind of in this new role?
yeah, so a few years ago now, it's like three, time just flashes by.
It's 2023 now. I can't believe it
It's
either.
crazy. Um uh I typically contracts with the Overwatch League were just like year in, year out. And um I wanted to have a little bit more impact on like the overall product and the
Mhm.
overall league. So uh working with them closely and like working with like the people in the Call of Duty side, it was able to like, hey, how can I come in and be an additive person to the team that can help with product and content? Like those are the two main things. It's like products mostly like what are our tournament formats, how is like the regular season going to look like, what should we do from an event footprint, like
Mhm.
really kind of like touching a little bit of everything
Sure.
across the board. And then content and broadcasts of like, hey, what are we going to do with the broadcast. Like, what do we want to try differently this year? What do we want to do to kind of push that along? Um, for the first year, I actually just kind of sat and learned a lot. Like, obviously, did a ton of work,
Right.
but really just wanted to. I mean, there are so many people that I work with and just meet even more people across, Activision Blizzard who are so smart. Uh, who I just want to like learn how they think about certain problems and situations and kind of their experiences and how they handle things. And a lot of like my first moments where okay, I'm just going to sit around and listen. Like I've now kind of been put in this awesome position where working with people who have worked at sports leagues, worked at Blizzard for decades, and on all these different titles and whatnot, and how can
Yeah.
I take their experiences and what they've learned and what like really kind of viewpoints I find awesome and like the way they think about things and kind of mold that with like my old school esports mindset of like, oh, like just set up 30 PCs
Just put a
and turn
bit,
them
yeah,
on.
we'll
Yeah.
land tournaments up. Come on now.
Yeah,
Just
like
get some
oh, like
tables, get some
just get
rollouts.
it, just get an empty room and throw a bunch of computers there and let's go.
Is
And
there a
but
LAN plug-in
um,
anywhere?
yeah, exactly. And like, how do you kind of like merge those worlds?
Mhm.
And that's really kind of what I focused on early on. And then and now as time's gone on, have a big impact on kind of like what our seasons look like and when we should start, when we should end, like kind of what should our cadence be, how are we going to do these
The
types of
big
things. And
decisions.
and it's been awesome because it directly, obviously the community gets super hyped, they get behind it, they love when Overwatch League is back. And uh and just seeing kind of like those the amount of work that goes in to make a league happen, I don't think people realize.
Yeah.
You don't
It's a
just say,
lot.
hey, we're going to do a
God bless
league
the
this year.
operations crews.
Yeah, you don't just say we're going to do a league this year and then just like throw a schedule online and it happens. Like
Mhm.
these are months and months of like conversations and things that go on and just kind of like brainstorming. um that working that much on it and then seeing it come to life actually makes me appreciate it even more.
So, as a producer, you obviously work pretty hands-on with other talent. Do you enjoy kind of like that side of it, or do you enjoy being the talent that gets worked with? Like, was it kind of like an interesting like brain switch for you?
Uh, yeah, a little bit. Like looking at the show from kind of the outside looking in, and then seeing kind of how I approach this talent are like two different ways.
Yeah.
Um, I would say when looking at it's kind of funny actually. The stuff that I came in, the stuff as talent that bugged me
Mm.
and like I thought I was gonna hate the most is actually kind of the stuff I really like.
Oh, like what?
Uh, like when you're talent and marketing and PR asking you for stuff, you're just like, well, I'm a talent. What do you need? Like, okay,
Yeah.
fine, I'll fill this out. Like, you're just like, but working on that type of stuff, like brand strategy and marketing and the content that goes along with it and social and whatnot, like that's the type of stuff that once I started like working more in the full-time capacity, I was like, man, this stuff is like awesome. I was
It's
like,
a big puzzle. You're just putting all the
yeah,
pieces together. It's fun.
exactly. And I love like the complex problems and just kind of, forming solutions and how do you get there and then also making stuff that people can play with and engage with, I think is awesome. Where yeah, when I first joined, I was like, I was like, I'm probably gonna enjoy, the stuff where I have impact on the broadcast, and then I also do talent work, and
Right.
I have some impact on the season structure, but and really the kind of broadcast stuff will be cool. But really, I've kind of almost gravitated towards the opposite, which is quite interesting because I also think uh you don't really know what you like want to do a lot of the times, right?
Sure.
Like you think you do, but then you get exposed to something, and then
Yeah.
it's and then you're like, wait a second, like, do I really want to do this? Or like, that's kind of cool. Like, and you find these different things where I think that's what like being full time has really allowed me to do is explore so many different things and avenues of like where you could go with a career.
Must be nice to have a little bit of power too. It's nice being talented because everybody sees you, but like we have no power over things. So I'm sure it's nice to be like, yeah, I did that. The season's that long because of me. Ha, take that.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it's interesting. It's like because obviously there are trade-offs and things that you have to do along the way. It's like um I think you just kind of take like the best advice that you kind of get from all different walks and just kind of put that in, right? Try and craft it with like, the love of the game and the scene in mind, right? And then, obviously everything else that goes along with it. But yeah, it's fun. I always love when it's like, okay, like so what's next? And it's like, well, let's figure out what's next, right?
Hey, honestly, well, that's a great question. That's a great question because we're going to get on to what you think is actually going to be next. So let's talk about esports broadcasting as a whole. You have seen
Yeah.
every single angle of this industry. I mean, MLG, Call of Duty, Overwatch. I can't imagine a better person to actually ask this question. People keep saying we're in like an esports winter. I'm totally not smart enough to like totally knows what that means, but like what do you think is the future of esports in the broadcasting sense? Are we going to continue to
Mm,
see these large scale events? Do you think it'll go back a little bit more local? How do you see things evolving to kind of fit the modern day?
uh, I mean, I think it's bright. I think with like so many events coming back and different things, I ultimately think gamers want to be able to like kind of touch and engage with like gaming culture in a
Mm,
way, where you see events like DreamHack, like PAX, and GDC, like all these events like starting to come back.
yep.
Uh, that you're like, man, like esports is obviously a part of like a lot of those events already, and
Yeah.
it's now that more people are just getting involved with gaming, just like full stop, right? Just like uh, they kind of take a natural path, right, where uh somebody gets involved with gaming, they kind of see like, oh wait, there's like a professional scene, or there's a league that I can follow, or there's so many people just enjoy gaming content in general, and then want to go engage with it in different ways, right? They want to go to events with their friends and cheer. They want to go to events and trade pins and plushies and stuff that I've never done. I would never
Yeah.
really understand, but when we do an Overwatch event, I see so many people who they love Overwatch, and they may not even love like Overwatch esports, but they just love celebrating the game and the brand with other like-minded people. That I think there's going to be just more like amazing moments and times ahead where people are going to be able to celebrate gaming culture with each other, which is super important. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge reason why a lot of us are in this industry to begin with, right? We went to an event, we fell in love, we met a bunch of cool people there, and we just kept going, right?
Oh
And
man, I'll
giving
never
people
forget
more
my
touch
first.
points like that.
You never
You
do.
you
You
never
never
you
forget
never
your first
do.
one.
You never do. It's like it's crazy whenever there's some people, on other games that I've met, and like, some other games like dev teams, and they're like, man, like you kind of watch online and it's like pretty hype, and then you go to an event and you just feel the energy, and you see how excited all these people are, and it's like you just get hooked after that. It's really difficult to explain.
So let's say I'm a young college kid. I just went to my first esport event. I'm hooked. I got a great personality. I have a couple games I like. How do you get into esports broadcasting as a kid? Like, what's step one and two so that I can one day end up like Mr. MX to I can do all these different esports. Like, how do you get into this now? Because I feel like it's such a competitive space.
It's super competitive. I think trying to find lower level leagues and tier two, tier three kind of competitions, local competitions that you can put together, some experience on. Even watching VODs and like practice casting over those different types of VODs and sending in reels and different types of things. That I also just wouldn't. It's funny. Um, when I was at MLG, we had an intern who really wanted to be a sportscaster, and he was doing school for broadcasting and whatnot. And somebody missed a day of the show, so we were like, "Hey, do you want to do it?" Ended up being like Jack Dunlop, like Courage JD,
Oh
who's like a
wow.
huge influencer, like streamer. Uh, but that really springboarded his like, I mean, when he casted the first time, we were like, "Wait, you could do this like that? Like, wait, what? Like, you should be casting all the time." I mean, this is a he was there making graphics for an event, with us in New York, and you just kind of own those skills and like right place, right time. I mean, and things like that happen. I think just don't pigeonhole yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to go down the talent path and that's it, right? There's so many other ways to get involved
Yep.
in gaming, and then also still utilize some of that talent, right? If a game you work on, or a league you work on, or a team you work for, like is putting out content and whatnot, they're going to need probably a face behind that content. Like that could be you, and that could be a springboard in, and a different path to be able to kind of get into broadcasting, where I think the tools from broadcasting can be like transferred to a lot of other different parts of gaming. So
Yeah.
I would say if you really want to be a broadcaster, practice those skills, but don't be close-minded to all the other opportunities out there in gaming.
I like that because the more things that you do, like you said, the better broadcaster you'll be. Like if you learn more about how the actual production works, like if you learn how graphics work, it's going to make you a better broadcaster because you're going to know how they're made and how they're loaded up, and it's just going to give you an opportunity for context. I like what you said though about practicing on VODs because I remember when I was coming up and I wanted to do classic sports broadcasting. It was
Yeah.
the old get out a tape recorder, go watch a game and do play by play for a baseball game while you're watching it on your tape recorder. And it's all about just getting those on air hours so that you're comfortable when that camera goes on. And I will say, to the competitiveness of this whole industry, like you got to realize that the more skills that you have, if the talent thing doesn't work out, because it's hard, the more skills you have, the more opportunities you're always going to have to work in this industry. And I like
Yeah.
that. Transferable skills are very important in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff that you look at with like broadcast talent could be transferable to PR, marketing, communications, like community management, right? There are so many different avenues to go. And I think that's one thing that now that I've kind of like I still obviously do talent, but I'm really involved in like other stuff is just seeing how many avenues there are for people to work in gaming.
Yep.
That a lot of times I think fans or people watching see the people on camera. They may see, a personality on Twitter or two that they think runs the league. And, in their mind, that's the 10 people who are, doing the entire thing.
Yeah.
When in actuality, there's, hundreds of people who work on these types of programs. And like everything you see is, being touched by somebody. It's not just like 5 to 10 people. And just thinking about how you can get involved and get your foot in the door and work in, different types of avenues in the industry. We have, great people in marketing, communications, PR, community, like, game dev, right? If you really want to go into the full on making
Oh
games,
man.
like mindset, like,
That's a fun
uh,
that's a fun part of
there,
the industry.
yeah, there are so many different routes that you can take. And I also would say no route is the right route. Like
Mhm.
there's no real like none of us like there's not really like a formula of like how to get into gaming.
Right.
Well, we have people from sports, we have people from banks, we have people from endemic esports, we have people from all over the place,
Yeah.
right? That love gaming, want to come work in it, and you just never really kind of know, right? When you have the opportunity to do so or where the time is right. And uh I think that's like a huge thing. There's no real clear path on how to get into gaming, but I can say, um, being passionate for games is a great start. If you have passion for games, and you build up a few skills, right? I think it's really easy to see the people who genuinely love games and love esports and want to be a part of it, and that goes a long way.
I will also say, if you're a young broadcaster, I don't think it's a terrible idea to like poke some of your like if there's a
Yeah,
broadcaster that you really look up to, like shoot them a DM, tell them that you love their work, ask if they can like take a look at your reel or something. I think the one thing I found about Esports Town is that they love giving back. They love working with students. They love actually having an opportunity to like share and get the next generation excited because you're kind of one of the original generation of esports casters. I'm sure you would love nothing more than to see what the next one, two, three generations of casters look like and, help them out when they can.
yeah. You want to see esports go on forever, and I think
Exactly.
ultimately, right, you want to leave, what I think like some of the people, at ESL and MLG and all these other companies, they've kind of created this space really for a lot of people to obviously be competitors, but a lot of people to kind of grow up and end up working in gaming. You want to try and like how you said, like pay that forward a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, like what can I do and how can I leave this in a better spot for the next generation of talent and players coming up?
And also, apologies for making you maybe feel a little bit too old there. Let's,
Dude,
yeah,
no,
honestly,
it's cool though to see though. Like honestly, some it becomes it's like I have kind of seen, every iteration of esports, I feel like at
sure.
this point. Uh but it's also awesome. I know when I was at DreamHack in San Diego, I was seeing people that I played games with when I was like 14, 15.
That's so
Like
cool.
and it's just seeing them like still involved, still like
Still
passionate,
grinding it out, getting it
and
done. Yep.
it just makes you wanna just keep going, uh, there's not really another community that you can get involved with like that and work in and have these kind of lifelong friends.
Especially when you're young. The one thing about esports that you'll notice, a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds coming up in the mix. Like I used to work in sports media. If you got a job before you were like 22 years old in sports, you are like literally the second coming. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier, a little bit more accommodating, I would say, to the next year, to Gen Z, I guess the Zoomers now. Before we let you go here, just let's talk about the future of you. You've done so much already. I'm sure you got plenty more to go in this industry. What are you hoping for over the course of the next year or so?
Oh man, I'm excited. Our season starts this weekend, so excited to get back to like casting
Oh
again.
man, so
It's
you're
always
you're
like,
this is like the calm before the storm for you
yeah,
then,
yeah,
huh?
it's always like the week of. It doesn't really hit you, I feel like, until
No,
you start.
no way.
Until it's like that first rehearsal day and the first broadcast day. But to get back to broadcasting, I think will be fun. And then I think you just I really like just learning from other people. Obviously trying to uh, grow our esport, grow the league and the pipeline for players that can be coming for like years to come. Uh, but then also being a fly on the wall in a lot of these like fun, chats, conversations, and meeting new people in the industry and people who may be even new to the industry, right?
Yeah,
And seeing kind of their experiences from working in different avenues, whether it be traditional sports or other types of backgrounds, and figuring out how that all kind of applies to what we do, because esports is still really young.
it is. It
Yeah,
is.
it seems like it's been around for a while, but you look at baseball and basketball and all these like traditional sports that everybody's accustomed to, uh, 75, 100 years old, right? Like we are, 10, like 12, like,
Yeah,
like in terms of lane. So, I think really having a cool, like realizing where you are in the moment, being able to shape the future of something that we all hope is around, 75, 100 years from now, right? Which is kind of crazy to think about, but you're kind of like laying the bricks right now, right? For the foundation that's to come.
I could just imagine us being 80, being like back in my day during
Yeah.
Overwatch 2, and it's like Overwatch like 60.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild to think about, but like our generation, right? We'll grow older and we'll be like kind of the first ones that were like addicted to video games, right? And like, yeah, will I want to watch like baseball when I'm older, basketball? Like probably still, but I also want to watch some games,
Exactly,
I
right?
want to watch some games, right? And I think just passing that on to the next generation is cool.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe if the NBA 2K League is still around, I'll be a 60-year-old host. Like, so maybe we'll actually start seeing old people host esports events, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Matt, thank you for coming along with us today. Really appreciate the conversation. You've given us a lot of great tidbits, and like I said, you're like the first like real big talent that we've had on. So awesome to get some great info out to the young college kids, and for any aspiring talent out there, man, you gave some real hitters. So they should be taking
Oh man,
notes.
yeah, no, thanks for having me. This is a great combo. And I
Yeah.
think it's important, right? There are a lot of people out there could be like wondering how do they get involved, how do they get into a spot, that we've been kind of like lucky and fortunate to be in, and just give people the tools to get involved in what I think is an awesome industry. But I think we got something cool going on.
Great. Well, hey, go follow him at MattMRX, at Matt Mr. X, I should say, on Twitter. Give him a follow. Overwatch season coming up soon, so can't imagine many better people to follow on social media for Overwatch content. But that will do it today for us for the Magic Gaming Esports Academy presented by Florida Blue. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be back in again with a couple weeks with another great guest. We'll keep it a secret this time, but see you guys next time. Thanks for coming.